Welcome back to MGD 111, Photoshop 1. We're going to take a break from our selection tools and learn about the history palette, which is a really important tool. Now, I've had this photo open for a while, and I've done a whole bunch of different things to it. If you've worked in any other parts of Adobe Creative Suite, Dreamweaver, Illustrator, InDesign, you know that Command Z, that's Z as in zoo, is the undo command. And the cool thing is, in those programs, if you do Command Z, it'll undo the last step. Hit Command Z again, it'll undo the step before that, before that, before that. All the way back to when you last opened or saved the document even. You can undo hundreds of steps. For whatever reason, Photoshop doesn't work that way. There is a key command that you can use, but even better, we need to use our history palette. So if you don't have that one open already, this is one you always want to have open. So go under Window, click on History, and there it is. And I'm going to lock it into my palette stack here because this is one I always want to have handy. Now, what does History Palette do? Well, if we zoom in on this, you'll see some of the steps that we've been doing. Whoops, sorry. Let's try that again. Some of the steps that we have done here, we did a single row marquee, rectangular marquee, we deselected, etc., over the past few lessons. Now the cool thing about that is we can actually go back, if we just click on a step, say here, elliptical marquee, it'll temporarily undo all of the steps that have happened since then. If I click on the next one, deselect, you'll see it redoes that, etc., etc. So it allows you to go back in time to a certain degree. Now by default, it only remembers, I think, the last 25 steps or so, so you have to be kind of careful. And every single thing that you do is a step. Each time I draw an elliptical marquee, it's a new step. Each time I deselect, it's a new step. So we want to be careful not to use too many steps if you can help it. But as you can see, we can go through these steps and just get to the exact point in history where we want to be. Another thing about the history palette here, at the very top of your palette, you'll notice it says sled.jpg and it has a little icon there. That is actually the original state of this picture when I opened it, or when I first saved it, if it's a new file. So if I click on that, it just takes me back to that state. Now you notice those steps are still available if I want to go back and use them. Anytime I want to click on these, I can go back to a particular step. However, let's say I go back to elliptical marquee here. Notice it says elliptical marquee twice after that, deselect, etc. If I go in and do another step here, I'm going to make a rectangle marquee. You notice all those other steps are gone. And guess what? They're not coming back unless I do Command Z. And I have to do it right then and there. So if I go back in time and do a new step, I'm not inserting that step in the middle. I'm basically creating a new future for this picture, if you will. So you want to be careful not to overuse that one, because once you move on to something else, let's draw another marquee here, there is no undoing it. I cannot get back and record all of those steps that I've done since then. But it's really neat that we can actually not just undo and watch the steps undo themselves. We can actually go back to a specific point, because a lot of times these steps are sort of invisible, but we remember that we made a specific color adjustment or a specific maybe we changed color mode or something. So we can find that exact point in time and go back to it if we need to. Now, caution on the history. You notice I've got these steps showing here. If I save this picture and I close it, notice my history is blank. If I open this picture up again, open recent, sled, none of that history remains. Now everything I did to the picture remains, but the steps that I used to get there are lost in history. So be careful using the history palette. It's a great tool, but you have to use it correctly in order for it to be fully effective. But anyway, keep that one open at all times. It's incredibly useful.